Welcome to the video, guys. I'm Zach Reininger, and today we have a special guest. That's right. We're diving into all things solar, batteries, lithium systems, everything from use cases to charging information to aftermarket systems, generators, how this works and what makes sense for people that are actually using these systems. And today's guest is, in my opinion, a very special person. So this is Duane Yoder. Duane is our head of operations. So he's our operations manager for all of Millersburg, Indiana. And what that means is for all the Flagstaff and Rockwood plants that we have there in Millersburg, Indiana, Duane is over all of that. And he's been with us for 21 years, which is kind of wild to think because he's only 39 years old. You do the math on that. He's been with us longer than he's been alive without us. That's pretty cool. And Duane, he's a fantastic man. Like he's married like 17 years. He's got 3 beautiful daughters. He's just a good man, and he wants to help people. And I greatly appreciated him taking the time to sit down and answer kind of a Q&A, just a list of questions that we get all the time. And I think Duane he's one of those rare examples of like a true servant leader. Like this is a man who leads by serving others, and I think he's an example of that. And so this video, the video quality isn't that great. We recorded on Zoom, and so it's a little grainy, but the information is very valid, and I think it would be helpful for you, for anybody that's shopping for any kind of solar system or has questions around these kind of systems. There's a lot to unpack here, a lot to learn. Let's jump in. Thanks for watching. All right. Well, I'm Zach Reininger with the Flagstaff Rockwood Division, and I'm here with Duane Yoder with the Flagstaff Rockwood Division. Duane is the operations manager for all of Millersburg, all of our plants there at Flagstaff and Rockwood, and he is our in-house solar, guru, driving force, the backbone behind everything that we have done with all of our solar innovations. And so today we're doing kind of a compilation of all the questions people have, not all of them, but as many as we could put together. And we're going to do a little Q&A with Duane and see if we can catch him off guard and put him on the spot here. But he is a wealth of knowledge. And Duane, thank you so much for doing this, man. I think it's going to be helpful for everybody out there.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
All right. Well, we're just going to jump right in, man. We'll try and make this as quick as we can and just jump through the questions here. And so run me through, obviously you're over all of our plants, and currently we're doing solar standard on everything, but we're offering a power package, and there's a differentiator there between the two. And we're not offering the power package on everything. Can you kind of run us through like broad strokes? What are the systems we offer and on what lines?
So all of our campers that we make has a solar panel, and all except some 10 campers have inverters as well. But the standard that comes with is the 200-watt solar panel with a 1,000-watt or 1,800-watt inverter, depending on what size you're getting. But that is mainly for everyday use. It's just the batteries you put on the front by the A-frame, the hitch, and then the inverter powers several outlet circuits in the trailer itself. But on the power package, we offer in the E-Pros, we offer 460 amp hour battery, 30 amp solar controller, 3 solar panels on the roof.
So that's 600 watts of solar. It's still the same, right. 200 watt panels. Okay.
Right. Correct. And then 3,000 watt inverter charger. And then on the microlight, mini lights line, we do same system, but it has a 60 amp solar controller because it's got 5 200 watt, so 1,000 watts of solar on the roof. But everything else is the same as the E-Pro in that still the 460 amp hour battery, still the 3,000 watt inverter charger. Mm-hmm. And then on the fifth wheels, the classic and the signature line, we do 460 amp hour battery with the option to add the second one. And then that has 6 200 watt solar panels, so 1,200 watts of solar on the roof. And that then has a 3,500 watt inverter charger because of it being a 50 amp service.
Got it. And the fifth wheel one, that's new for 24, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And this is something, I mean, when did we go to standard solar? Was that 2018 or 19?
It's been a while. I think it's
Yeah.
2018.
And that was just like a single 100-watt panel. I mean, it's funny the iterations as we've grown into this and as the technology has grown, all there. And for me, you know, I get a lot of questions in my territory about it, and one that comes up quite often for me, and this is, I don't know that there's an easy way to answer this, but it is always, people want to know the difference in like understanding watt hours and amp hours. And I guess, is there a better way to just say like which one is more important to pay attention to? Because it depends on the person's background often too. Like sometimes if they're electrical engineers, they get real nitty gritty, and I'm like, I don't know, dude. But can you shed any light on that? Like when you say 460 amp hour battery, does that convert to watt hours for anybody? And is there anything that you think customers need to pay attention to with that?
It is. It's mainly how it's just a different way of measuring energy. And a lot of it depends on the language that is on the component that you're using. So if you're talking batteries, it's almost always amp hours. If you're talking components, it's often how many watts it takes. And so amp hours does convert into watt hours. So our 460 amp hour battery would convert into 5,520 watt hours. It's basically your amp hours times your voltage.
Okay. So theoretically, if I have 1,000-watt coffee maker, I could run that for 5.5 hours before I drain that battery. Am I looking at that the right way?
Yeah. There's also more math that goes into it, because you're 1,000 watts in a coffee maker is at 110 volts. So convert that to 12 volts. It's more than that in watts. So it gets tricky in the conversion from 12 volt to 110 volt. And it's probably quite a bit deeper than what we want to get to here.
Well, I'm glad that I can at least like feel the pause in your voice of trying to explain it, because I get asked these questions and I have to try and tell people I'm not your Huckleberry on any of this. Like, I don't understand for sure. And I don't know if it's just a fair comparison of like I said, like watts to hours. So it's good to know that there's way more to it. And to simplify it down, it's just, you can do the math, but you can just run a lot of stuff on 460 amp hours. We'll just say that. Another one that we get often is, like a power expectation from people. Everybody wants to know, like, how long my battery is going to last. And that question is always a tricky one for me, because there's so many different scenarios that can come in. It's like asking, how long is your cell phone battery going to last? Well, are you sitting in your office watching 4K YouTube videos all day long, or is it sitting in your truck not being touched? And we're like, how long is a tank of gas going to last you in your truck? Well, give me some scenarios. Am I driving 40 miles to work every day? Do I work from home? Like, there's so many things that go into it that I think people want this black and white answer, when it's almost impossible to give that until you have more information. And so I'm curious if you could give, some power expectations for a normal customer of, say, like if they're on one 12-volt battery versus two 12 volts, or 2 6 volts, or one lithium. Like, there's so many options for people that I don't think that they really know where to start and what to expect. And I guess I would ask you, in one panel and like full sun, in those different battery setups, what would you tell someone, like, how long is the refrigerator going to last? And again, I know it's not necessarily possible to give like a perfect, X.
Right. And it all depends on how often you open your refrigerator, how warm your unit is, all that. But typically, a refrigerator will, when it's running, it'll pull roughly 5 12-volt amps. So, and it's not always running. It kicks on and off. So it depends on, obviously, how much you open your refrigerator, how much warm food you have in there, how much all that. But if you're just looking at going to the campground, hooking to shore power, 112 volt's going to do just fine for you. If that's all you're going to do. Now, if you're wanting to do some off gridding, I would, obviously, 2 12 volts is double of 112 volts. So that would be, double your capacity. But it also varies on 12 volts. There's so many different amp hours, sizes. There's a big selection of
Wet
batteries
cell,
you can get. Yep.
AGM, like there's so much in this space. Yeah.
So there's a lot of variance in that, but I would say, if you're looking to do a little bit of off-gridding, or there's a time period when you're loading your RV with food, or prepping it to go camping where it's not plugged into anything, you might want to look at either two 12 volts or two 6-volt batteries. 6 volts, you have to buy two, because it's to get 12 volt. Your RV runs on 12 volts, so you have to have two. But those typically have a bigger capacity, a higher capacity, which is why they're used mostly in golf carts.
Yeah, they're deep cycle, right?
Yeah, they're deep cycle, and there's science behind why 6 volt is better than 12 volt, but I don't necessarily know those answers. But it is proven to be better than two 6 volts are almost always better than two 12 volts. So if you're looking at putting two batteries on, I would suggest do two 6 volts.
And so, I mean, in the tier of things, it would kind of be, in your opinion, at least, start one 12 volt, maybe two 12 volts if you're doing a little bit of dabbling in. And I guess the further away you get from consistent access to power, the more up the chain you would go to, like two 6 volts, and then ultimately probably to lithium would be kind of your guidance.
Yes, correct. And if you're looking at lithium, that you get a lot more amp hours, a lot more capacity for the size of battery it is, for the weight of battery it is. So, but you're also looking at quite a bit more cost.
Yeah, that's a big one that comes up a lot of, customers ask that all the time, well, should I just buy lithium? And it's such a nuanced question of, again, it's like you said, like, how are you using it? What's your plan? And if they truly have never owned anything before and they don't know for sure, they have aspirations to do all the different kinds of dry camping, but maybe they're going to be plugged in. I don't know if you agree with this, but I usually just encourage people to go use it with what it comes with. If the dealer supplies a 12 volt, 112 volt, like, go use it, see what your limitations are. If you start pushing against those limitations and it's a pain point, then go upgrade rather than go drop, another $700 on a really significant battery investment. I don't know if that's the right answer for everybody. Some people just want to have it, and that's great, but that's just kind of how I've approached it. And I don't know, what's your take on that?
I agree. There's so many different ways to camp with so many different RVs that, if you have a smaller one where you want to go off grid a lot, that's a completely different scenario than a big, long travel trailer that you want to park at an RV camp and leave it there. So there's a lot of different ways to camp. So it's all going to depend on what your style of camping is and what you're expecting from it on battery. Now, if you're, I agree. I think you should go try it out, see what style of camping you're going to do before going and investing the money in a lithium. Some people, including myself, tend to go worst case scenario and, spend the money up front.
Well, that was going to be one of my follow-up questions. And, these aren't always necessarily coming in any particular order. It's kind of organic as our conversation is going, but what would you choose? I mean, how would you set up?
If I was buying new, I would go power package. But that's also, I know what it's capable of doing. And obviously I'm sold on the power package because, I kind of help put everything together.
Sort of your baby a little bit. I get it.
Yeah. So, but if I was buying used, and setting up my RV for the first time, I would probably go with two 6 volts. Personally, I think that covers a lot of bases. It covers, it's not a big investment in buying it, but it's going to get you the best bang for your buck in
totally.
lead acid.
And that was our experience too, in our 21DS that we had, which I think at the time only had like a 100 amp panel on it. I went with the two 6 volt deep cycles for that same reason in a series, just because you could access more of it. They would hold the charge better. And that's something that I did want to touch on, because I think there's also some misconception in the battery space too. You're not always comparing apples to apples. If somebody's looking at a 100 amp hour 12 volt battery and a 100 amp hour lithium battery, and correct me if I'm wrong, but really in that 100 amp hour 12 volt battery, you're really only safely accessing about 50 amp hours before, if you go too low, it can damage the battery. Whereas with a lithium, I mean, they want you to keep it above 20 for, you don't want to discharge it too deeply too often, but you can access almost all 100 amp hours of that battery. Is that correct? When I say that?
Yeah, normally lead acid or AGM, it's if they rate the amp hours in full to dead, and if you kill them every single time, it's not going to last near as long. So at about 50%, you want to consider finding a charging source and get them charged. A lead or a lithium battery, it's you can kill it every time, and it's almost all of them have a reserve in them to where it saves the computer chips inside and the programming inside to where once it gets charging voltage again, it's gonna know what to do with it basically. So there's almost always and it doesn't hurt them for the most part. From the brands that I've talked to, it doesn't hurt to go to 0% on lithium. It's like a
well, like your cell phone.
I think that's true with it's like your cell phone. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and the lithiums will recoup their charge at a faster rate. Isn't that correct than like a 12 volt or a 6 volt?
Yeah, typically you can do a lot higher rate of charge on a lithium than you can on lead acid or AGM.
And is that part of, just to clarify, we do offer the two systems, the one that's the standard solar, we're touching on that again, and then the lithium. So in just our standard solar system, you get the control panel on the wall. Because you have to go in there when you put a particular battery that you choose, whether it's lead acid, AGM, or lithium, when you're changing that battery, that computer is then communicating the charge rate to that battery. Is that correct from the solar?
Correct. So your solar panel actually gives off 20 volts, I believe it is. And then the solar controller converts it to 12 volt at what you need. But on like lithium, I think on lead acid, it charges at 13.4 or 13.6. And on lithium, it's oftentimes 14.2 or 14.4 is what it charges at. So it's charging at a higher voltage, which means it'll charge. It's able to take
a little bit faster on that. I mean, I think we're in agreement. I mean, obviously it's a higher level of investment, but the lithium performance wise is significantly better. That's why people want them. And then you can get into, and obviously we're talking kind of high level batteries here. I do want to dive into our power package specifically here in just a second, but the life cycle, I think, is something else that people need to factor in. And it's, you may save a little bit of money up front when you're buying a 12 volt versus a lithium, but your life cycle of how many charges you can get out of that is anywhere from, I mean, I think you even had told me like sometimes up to 10 times as long. So if you can get 300 to 400 charges out of your 12 volt, meaning 300 to 400 cycles, maybe that's a year and a half for some people. Maybe it's less than that, as opposed to 3 to 4 to 5,000 charges out of a lithium. That's an exercise I think most customers don't probably go through, is think about their replacement costs over that same amount of time. If that lithium is going to last you 5 to 10 years, but every year and a half you're having to replace that 12 volt, it's like you almost got to do that math of like how many years and kind of pull some of that forward to figure out maybe it is worth the investment, even for just the casual campground, always on power. Maybe it makes more sense for them. Is there anything go ahead?
I was going to say, if you want something that's kind of a worry-free battery, lithium's the way to go. I mean, there's a lot less maintenance. It's just and the cycles. And the thing about lithium, almost all of them have a cycle count on them that they're rated at, and it's not exact. I mean, it's close, but sure. So that's, you can see up front how long that's going to last you. And that normally the cycles are kind of from 100% to 0. So if you do 50% and then recharge it, that's only half a cycle.
And,
yeah. So it's definitely it's less maintenance. They're lighter weight. It's in general lithium. Yeah, it's a lot more money, but it's the way to go.
It's one of those where I talk about like a price versus cost. It's like price is what you pay at the register, but what does it cost you over that time, like of actually replacing it multiple times and doing all that? And when you really pull it out over a certain period of time of ownership, it might actually cost you more, even though the price was less. And so it's such an interesting thing that, we've been doing solar for what, God, I mean, 6 years almost now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's almost every other week I'm reaching out to you with another question where I'm like, okay, hang on a second. Like, this is such a deep rabbit hole that after 6 years, if I still have so many questions, and I've got units that I use with solar and batteries, and I still don't fully understand everything. So I think it's tough for our customer to really know exactly as well. And so that's why all these questions I think are going to be so helpful. In a perfect scenario, we have our single solar panel that we do that's 12 or 200 watts. How many amps per hour is that going to pull into the battery? Because I know you mentioned like the watt hours that goes then, and that's, again, it comes back to that whole like watts versus amps. We're talking about both, like what matters. But how many amps is that going to bring into a single battery if a customer has one panel?
So in perfect scenario, 10 amps is what it would pull in.
And we obviously offer an optional second panel for just our standard solar system. Is it a completely linear math, meaning if I add a second panel with the same amount of sun, same perfect, it's going to pull in an additional 10 amps, or does it tier down at all? Okay.
No,
so it is linear there. That's good to know. So, I mean, if I had 2 panels in full sun, I'm pulling 20 amp hours in, or 20 amps an hour. Okay. And that's the big question mark, when people want to know how long is it going to last. It's like, well, what's the sun doing? Are you tucked under trees? Like, what all are you running? What size batteries do you have? Like, is it 105 out or is it 70 degrees out? And
Indiana sun is different than Colorado sun, or, Texas sun. I mean, it makes a difference on where you're at in the country.
Absolutely, it does. And, you always feel like you're sort of being elusive to the question and trying not to give an answer, but it's always it's like the old question of, well, how long are my propane tanks going to last? Well, how much propane are you using? Like, you sound like a smart aleck when you answer it, but it's like, I can't, there's no black and white. So, all right. So jumping into a little bit more on our power package. So kind of getting out of, the comparisons of the two different stuff here and straight into, again, our power package, guys, being the upgraded lithium system, where you've got different setup on air conditioners, like everything is wired through it, the really big inverters. This is our kind of like premier lithium system, all in one. Same question, right? Like, how long can I run on the power package? Because everybody is going to ask that. What all can I run and how long can I run? Because there's limitations on the regular system. You can run all your 12-volt stuff, but you're not going to run your microwave. You're not going to run your air conditioner. And then we have, usually it's one circuit routed through the unit that has plugs set through the inverter. And that's it, which is a lot of stuff. But when you get to the power package, now you can run everything. Am I right?
Right. We do keep the electric part of the water heater, the 110 version, or part of the water heater, we keep off of it just so people don't accidentally kill their battery without realizing it. But it does run everything else, from the air conditioner to the microwave to everything. All the receps are on the inverter. And the biggest question is, how long can I run my air conditioner is probably the biggest question we get. Yes. So converting the air conditioner basically pulls about 100 to 110 amps of DC amps when running. And that DC means coming out of the battery. So if you do the simple math, it would be, if your air conditioner runs nonstop, which it won't, it'll reach temperature and cut off. So it depends on, outside circumstances, how much is your door open, how hot is your outside of the RV, what's your thermostat set out on the inside, and a lot of other factors. What else are you using in your RV? But typically, if you figure 100 amps on the air conditioner, you have 460 amp hours. So you're looking at 4.5 hours. But that's if it runs nonstop and taking everything else out of the equation. So it's
in isolation.
Right. So it's not, as far as answering the question, how long is it going to last? It all depends on how it's being used. And like you said, it's the same as your cell phone. Are you streaming videos all day, or is it in your pocket or on your desk, not being used?
Yep. And it's again, this is an even harder conversation, because this is this is obviously a larger investment for someone to make in this system. It's not as affordable as the system that we do standard. You know, you're spending for something that's really robust, and everybody wants to know what they're getting. And again, it's so tough because you want to give those answers, but it's very difficult. You know, and I'm down here in Texas. It's going to be 107 again today. Like, my house struggles, and it's a 2-year-old air conditioning system, all brand new. You know, all the SEER ratings, everything. It's last night it was 77 degrees when I had it set at 73. You know, it's working. And people, I think, hear a solar system and they hear, you know, oh, lithium package, and I'll run the air conditioner. And I think they just hear that and they think they're off grid. They're done. It's great. And what I have found, I think it's especially bad even on the manufacturing side, where, you know, the sales reps, they don't understand it. They don't know what it's capable of. They tell the dealerships information that is just, you know, I hear feedback from other brands and other things they're doing. They're like, oh yeah, 3 to 4, 5 days off grid. And I'm like, well, yeah, in like Northern Michigan in September, you know, like it's, you know, it's going to be great. Like, but where, what do we, give me some more context? Because if you're here in Texas, I mean, that air conditioner is going to work all day long to keep it cool. Like, it's just so hot. And so my biggest thing that I want for customers is to understand that the system is awesome, but it also has its limitations, and to understand so we can set their expectation. So when they go use it, they're not frustrated or they don't feel like it's not meeting what they thought it would do. So I think that education for that customer is so important. And, you know, the one thing that you and I have talked quite a bit about, and one question that I always had was, you know, can we charge it with a generator? And what's your take on the generator on that?
It can be charged with the generator. Obviously, the bigger the generator, the faster the recharge. But the system, the power package system, does what we call power sharing. So you can dial down what you're charging at. So if you're plugged into a smaller generator, you just dial it back down to whatever amperage that your generator can handle. And then when the air conditioner kicks in, it's going to pull the extra from the battery. And it's going to run your air conditioner. It's going to run whatever you have plugged into it. It's going to run like it's you're hooked to shore power. But that's what the power sharing does. It pulls the extra out of your battery.
So it's like an intelligent system, basically. So it's allowing you to balance things out.
The only problems we've ever had with generators was we've had a customer where his generator was what they call putting out dirty power, but it's basically the voltage range was a little bit outside of the normal parameters. So we have a USB interface kit on all 2024 models with the power package that Mastervolt can then remote in. All you have to do is take your laptop out there, plug it into this USB port, and they can remote in, troubleshoot. And what they did on this particular customer was they went in and saw that the generator voltage was a little bit outside the parameters, so they just opened up the parameters a little bit, so it would charge just fine, and everything was fine. But they did all that off-site. I mean, it was just a simple hooking up your laptop to it, and they came in and troubleshooted cool. and fixed it.
That's so cool. And I mean, I know you and I have nerded out on a lot of this. And first of all, thank you for, you know, indulging all my questions that I've had for you on this stuff. Because I'm going to order a power package unit this year and put it on. But like you and I've talked about, I think especially for the climate that I'm in, I think the bad boy package or whatever you want to call it, like I'm going to bring my generator that I have, throw it in the back of the truck. So now I can play both sides of this. So if I want to go dry camping and drive up to Colorado, and if I'm tucked under sun and I'm not getting enough, now I can crank it up a little bit for 2 hours, charge the batteries up, get through the night. Or if I stop at a Walmart and, you know, I'm driving up there and it's still 98 degrees outside, I can be driving, turn on the air conditioning back there, cool it down. In worst case, I crank up the generator a little bit and fill it back up. Time for bed. You know, I mean, I think the flexibility that gives you from a cool peace of mind and like being able to go anywhere, do anything is pretty fun to me. So I love that it can do the generator. That's super helpful. Yeah.
And to think that you can run, you know, if obviously you need to adapt down to your generator, but to think that you can run a big classic fifth wheel with a power package in it off of a 2,000 watt generator, stay fully powered up, run the air conditioner, basically as much as you need to, it's pretty cool.
It's awesome. And I mean, I've nerded out to the point too, where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm bringing a dual fuel generator. So to run off propane or gas. And then, we have the quick connects on the outside for our outside griddles that we cook on. And you can get a kit that goes on the generator and plugs right in there. So now you can run off your propane if you need to. So you're not always messing with lugging gas around. And like, I don't know, just to me, it's like, man, it's fully contained. It gives you so many more options. Like I laugh. It's a funny story because we went to Colorado in our 21 DS. And I didn't bring a generator. And this was prior to any power package thing. And my buddy took me mountain biking, and he's like he runs the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. Like he's an animal. And he crushed me to the point that like, I mean, I could barely walk. We get back to the camper, we're on their property. And I mean, it's during the day out there, it's hot. And I couldn't cool down, and I'm like sitting in the truck trying to cool down. It was to the point that they took me in to the ER and put like 3 bags of fluid in me and everything. Like he tried to kill me basically. But I think we laugh about it to this day because I'm like, man, if either I'd had a generator or if we had the lithium systems when we were out there, like I probably would have been all right. I could have got back and cooled down and drank enough fluids to cool down. But like, it's those like little things that I think about of personal use that I've had where I'm like, I would absolutely love to have this system. Again, it's not for every customer, but the system itself, I think, gives you so many options. And that's kind of what it's all about.
It really does.
All right, let's get into some. Sorry for the personal story there.
It's good. I enjoyed it.
Tried to kill me. It's kind of funny. What's real quick on that? So, what's the warranty on that lithium system? Because it's a pretty intense system.
Yeah, the whole system. It's 5 years on the whole lithium power package system.
Awesome. And we've kind of, we talked a little bit about. I mean, I guess I shared. And what's your opinion on like who do you think the ideal customer is for the upgrade?
I think somebody that's a serious, off the grid kind of person. Obviously, they'll know how to power save and how to conserve energy and how to make the best out of almost nothing. So I think that's your obvious choice of people that are going to want this. But there's also, in the bigger stuff, you're probably not going to go off gridding a lot. But anybody that travels a lot might, like you said, stop at a Walmart parking lot, sleep for the night. They got air conditioning. Or somebody that wants to go to their in-laws for the weekend or for the week, and they don't want to sleep in the house. They take their camper up there, they plug it into one of the garage receps or outside recep of the house. And they're basically like they're at a campground hooked up to 30 amp service or 50 amp service. So I think there's a lot of scenarios where this package makes sense. If you're gonna go to the campground and just park your RV at the campground and not ever off grid, then it's probably not for you. But another cool thing I thought about was your outside recep. If you're ever out of power at home, your RV is sitting next to your house. Your outside recep is basically a generator. It's a 15 amp circuit. It's not a lot, but you have a deep freeze in your garage, run a cord out to the RV, plug it in, and it's going to run your deep freeze for hours.
It's so funny you went that direction because you mentioned the outside recep a minute ago, and you kind of alluded to it earlier. But I think that's something that's probably being overlooked, by myself included, of, okay, so yeah, let's say you lose power. I mean, heck, down in Texas, the grid down here the last couple of years, like it's snowmageddons, everything. We have joked like we wish we had that here so that we could use it, in our driveway. But I never really thought about that from the standpoint of, yeah, you're right. Like save your deep freeze. When our power went out for a week down here during this bad storm a couple of years ago, our neighbors, we were up in our attics, hard wiring outlets, extension cords to our attic fans because we're all gas on our furnaces. We just couldn't run our furnace fans, and running extension cords down and out into the driveways to generators. And you're right. Like if that's on the side of the house, I mean, you could plug into that and run some of these things that, save you a ton of money in meat or keep your house warm. I mean, that's an interesting perspective of using it as a generator. But the one that, you touched on too, of you're right, because if you go to your in-laws house, most people are going to say, well, hell, they don't have 30 amp service out there for me to run anything. They don't have 50 amp. But because of what you said with the charger, where if I just take a normal extension cord and plug it into the house, I can dial that amperage down, and now it can access everything in the unit and run everything in the unit like I am on 30 amp shore power. Now, you're obviously not going to get the same amount of charge coming in because it's 110 versus, a full 30 amp. But that's super interesting for people as far as flexibility to be able to do that. Or like you said, this is what you said earlier, is like, okay, you're setting up to leave. Well, if I think about the scenario of how we use it, I'll bring it out front. We'll back it into the driveway. I'll start loading things up, doing all that. Maybe I'll put some water in the tanks just to make sure I got some for the road. And depending on what kind of trip we're doing, maybe it stays here overnight and we just roll in the morning. Well, if it's hot out, like I don't have any option to run that air conditioning system because I don't have a 30 amp plug. Actually, I have a dryer plug in my garage. I guess I do, but I don't have access to that. I would never really think to do that and get in there and do that. But you're right. I could run into the garage with an extension cord, plug the unit in through a pigtail, and it's going to run the air conditioning. So I'm not sweating like crazy trying to set it up. It's going to be comfortable while we're putting all the stuff in the fridge. So it's actually going to be using the system even before we ever even leave and go use the system. It's something I have not actually thought about. So I'm so glad that you pointed that out, because it makes it's just another use case of why it's more effective than just boondocking. And I know you've got little girls, I've got little girls. I know when I bring it in the driveway, like they will not leave that unit. The neighbor kids are going to come over. They're all climbing inside it. Like I can't let them do that when it's 100 degrees out, because they're going to die and it's so hot. All the things you're putting in there, you can't put your pantry goods in there because it's so hot sitting in that driveway. You wait till the last minute. I think the flexibility of that is pretty huge, man.
And if you don't enjoy getting into a hot camper when you're setting up, you can stop 30 minutes before you get to your destination, go back, turn the air conditioner on. And once you get to the campsite to set it up, the inside of the camper is nice and cool.
That's a huge plus to me down here. Because I think it's easy in a state like Texas, it's very easy to convince yourself why this package may not be worth investing in, right? Because most of our customers are going to campgrounds. It's too hot. You're running that air conditioner all the time. So maybe it makes more sense to buy a generator. But when you think about all these other applications of how it's just a value add, maybe you still bring a generator. Most people I know still have one down here. But there's so many other use cases beyond just like boondocking, it's very cool to me. And I guess speaking of some of that, run me through some charge scenarios. So I've ran the battery down to almost zero because I've been running the air conditioner in the driveway. So give me some different charge scenarios of, let's say, like my 7-way in my truck. I know that trickle charges batteries. My solar, maybe I plug into 110, and then also maybe like a 30 amp at a campsite. And one question I had for you is does it choose where the charge is coming from? Meaning if I'm plugged into 30 amp, is it only bringing charge in from 30 amp, or is it still using my 1,000 watts of solar? Where is it deciding any of that information, or what does it do?
No, it's taking everything it can get.
Awesome.
If you have it cranked up all the way, like your charging rate cranked up all the way, it's pulling your 30 amps from your campsite or wherever you're plugged into. It's pulling all the solar it's getting. If you're plugged into your vehicle, it's pulling the amperage from the power from the 7-way. It's taking everything it can get. You almost can't overwhelm this battery with the amount of charge you can put to it. To give some simple scenarios, like a 7-way off of your vehicle is roughly, at the most 10 to 15 amps. So you're looking at, about equivalent to 1 to 1.5 solar panels worth of charge coming in. So it's not a lot. on the solar, we have obviously the E-Pros and GeoPros have 3 solar panels. The Micro Minis have 5, and the Classic Signatures have 6. So all that's just limited because of the roof space we have. But
Right.
the say on an average sun, like in Indiana here, on an average sunny day, somewhat overcast, maybe a little bit, you're looking at about 6 to 7 amps per solar panel coming in. So if you do the math, you're looking at, say, 7 amps per solar panel on a Classic. You're bringing in 35 amps. Well, in 8 hours at 35 amps, you're basically adding 280 amp hours to your battery. So it's going to take, a day and a half for that to charge fully from zero, and that's not any power going out. But then on the 110 volt household recep, if it's a 15 amp recep, you can, put it up at 15. If it's a 20, you can go a little bit higher.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically about if you're at 15 amps, it's half of a 30 amps. So you're looking at 4 hours from dead to full, roughly. And then on a 30 amp full service, it's 2 hours, give or take a couple, minutes, but 2 hours dead to full. Okay. So if you combine all those together at once, you might get under 2 hours. You're dead to full.
And obviously it's a little different, like you said, from E-Pro to Micro to, the fifth wheels, because they're different size systems on the panels coming in. But, knowing that you've got your panels up there when you're going down the road, those are charging. You've got your 7-way that's activated as well, like another half a panel, basically. If you've got a couple hour drive between where you've been and where you're going, and you can be responsible with your power, maybe you stop for lunch somewhere and it sits in the parking lot and, it's still pulling in amperage. Like, you can make that work pretty well. Again, it's just power management, Right. It's like your phone. Close out some of the apps when your battery's getting low, because you're not going to be near a charger for a while.
And if you're getting really critically close, not just on our power package, but also on our regular units, we power to where you can have the battery disconnect off, and the solar is still charging your battery. So to ensure that you're not pulling any power out, you can shut the battery disconnect off and know that your solar panels
are still getting power to the batteries, just
to
not
the battery.
Anything in the unit.
Correct. The battery's filling up. It's just nothing's coming out of it.
And that's on our regular system too. So if I do the battery disconnect on the regular system, it's still putting power into the batteries.
Yes.
Just not discharging. I learned something new on this call. I'm always learning. I love it. That's good to know, man. I did not know that. So speaking of that, if someone drained, like I'm out camping, I crushed the battery, it's toast, like it's zero, whatever it might be. Is there enough, like if it's at dead zero, I got to bring my slides in, like I'm dead in the water. Like, is there enough, is it going to bypass enough from the 7-way to give me enough juice to bring in and like connect those, to bring in my slides and like bring up my jacks and things like that?
Yeah, it should. Just like a regular system. That would be enough, but this is the same way. So if you kill your battery all the way down to zero, there's a relay on the battery itself that will open, which allows nothing to go in, nothing to come out. But then when you plug it into shore power, that automatically closes again and starts charging. Now, if you didn't have shore power and you were depending on your truck, your 7-way to charge it, then you would have to manually go into the battery and push that relay closed, and then it would take the charge and you could run your slide outs in.
And you're talking like I've seen it before, but you're talking, it's almost, people need to imagine almost like a physical button that you like crank in, right? Like you twist it in and push in.
It is. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a physical button on the battery itself.
Okay. And you told me too, so you can add a second battery, but only to the 5th wheels, correct? Meaning another 460 amp hour battery.
Correct. It has to be the same size battery. On lithium, you can't mix and match different sizes. They just won't communicate. It won't work. But it is on the 5th wheels, you can add the second 460 from the factory. But on the mini light, micro light, E-Pro, GeoPro, we can't do that from the factory. There's not enough physical space in most of them to fit in another
Yeah.
battery.
We're tucking them in different areas wherever we can find the space. So I can because customers will ask this too. So that you're telling me then, okay, so if I have the 400, if I do the lithium system, I can't augment with more like 2 more 100 amp hour lithium batteries on the tongue. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
It won't work. They won't
Just won't
talk to
communicate.
each other. They won't communicate to each other, and it just won't work. It has to be, and that's with any lithium, from what I understand, any brand, any lithium, it has to be, if you're putting two together in series or in parallel, they have to be the same size.
Does it have to be the same brand or just the same size? Do you know?
If you ask each individual brand, they'll say yes, it has to be their brand. But I actually don't. I've never mixed and matched brands, so I don't know. I can't answer that for sure.
Okay. Yeah, just curious on that. And is that now, because this is a question that comes up too, is like, well, can I add this package later? Like if I decide that, man, I wish I had it, can I add this to my unit later? What I know the answer, but I want to ask you and get your opinion.
Not through us. I mean, there's upfitters. There's actually a local guy here that does upfitting, and that would do it for you. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit more expensive than if you buy it from the factory. It's just the way it works. You have to retrofit your unit to fit something that wasn't necessarily designed for it. So yeah, it's doable, and a lot of people do it, but it's going to be cost comparison. I think it's going to be quite a bit more expensive than
it's pretty significant. Yeah. What does that do? And I don't know if you know this answer or not, but what does that do if someone were to come in and add an aftermarket upfit system? Does that change anything as far as, component warranties that we have? If there's an air conditioning problem down the road that then is tied back to like, hey man, sorry, you talk to your upfitter because he fried your air conditioner. I think there's some level, it's like there is something positive about doing it from the factory because it's done intentionally with the components we use under warranty with the experts as opposed to kind of a third party. Can you speak on that third party aspect at all of maybe some of the downsides of that?
Yeah. I mean, there you have people, probably cutting your cabinets or cutting, making room for a battery, an inverter charger, all those components somewhere. So you're cutting into the integrity of the coach somewhat, but but there's also, for the most part, we take case by case. We take scenario by scenario, and if it has nothing to do with the power package, we're going to cover it under warranty. But if we think it's going to, the power package or whoever installed that, upfitted that, might have done something, we're going to ask more questions. Obviously, the best scenario is still getting it from the factory, because then your unit's covered from tip to tip. Everything inside, outside.
And it was designed with intentionality. Like that's
correct.
It's not just like one-off for this individual. And I'm not trashing any upfitters. I mean, a lot of these people do incredible work. They've been doing it a long time. They're a lot of them are cutting edge of the technology they're using. I think it's great. I mean, you can get on YouTube and see some of these systems and you're like, oh my God, now they're, $28,000. They cost more than our entire units do, but it's like, okay, I mean, it's awesome. But I think that there's a lot to be said about, getting it done right from the factory, make sure it's the right system.
Right.
We're getting close. We're going to wrap this up here, but what do you think? Cause I mean, you've been in this again, like I said, I mean, you've kind of tackled this full on for us. You've gone all the way into the rabbit hole. You get to see from all the different suppliers in the industry. We talk to everybody. I mean, we do a lot of volume in Millersburg. So there's a lot of incentive from other other suppliers to get us to use their systems because of the volume that we have. And we put it on everything. So you have the ability to kind of choose who you want to partner with and why. And I guess my question for you is why did you choose our system? And what do you think it does better, at least today, than the other systems that either our competitors are using or that other suppliers are offering us?
So I don't know what everybody else is using, but I did back in 2019, late 2019, we started looking at power package options, and I bought this brand battery and this brand inverter charger, and I put them together and I did a bunch of testing, and we had hours of testing in and different scenarios, and we had it to where it worked. But our question was always, is the battery manufacturer going to blame the inverter, manufacturer if something happens? Like, is it going to be finger pointing? We want to make sure we partner with the right people. And about that time, Mastervolt came in through that, because we were asking, vendors for inverter chargers and batteries and options. And through that, they came in and put a unique system together for us, for the ePros at the time, ePros and GeoPros. And it just makes sense. The whole system is all the same brand. Like, the batteries are Mastervolt, the inverter chargers Mastervolt. They actually have technicians that come on site and assemble everything on a board, all the wiring, all the fuses, everything. And then they program them, because every one of them needs to be programmed. They program them right on site. And then they're out here, 3 days a week, roughly. And if there's any, once they're installed and there's any issues, they're right here to check programming, to check anything that's wrong with them. And it's just the fact that gives me a peace of mind that they're right here. Sure. They know way more in depth about the system than we do even. And I feel like it's the best scenario. And I don't know every manufacturer's system, but I know that most of them aren't that.
That makes sense, though. I mean, and again, it's not that others are necessarily bad. We're not saying that. It's just, it's like the conversation we just had. Would you rather do it aftermarket with kind of something that person doesn't have intimate knowledge of, your particular unit that you have, and they're cutting here, and well, now maybe your bed feels a little like it's going to break because they had to cut the supports to get the batteries. Like, would you rather have it built intentionally from the beginning, or kind of cobbled together with multiple different things? I'm not saying those won't work and it's not going to get you solar and air conditioning, but you start mitigating risk, right? Like eliminating opportunity for other things to go wrong because they don't communicate right and do all that. So I think that's awesome. I actually didn't know that they came in and did those on site. I thought that we kind of bought the systems, they did them there, and then delivered them. I didn't know that they're actually physically hands-on. That's huge. I mean, to have that person there 3-4 days a week to be able to use, as far as like, hey, make sure, that's super hands-on. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, that speaks to me. All right, last question for you, man. And it's because this is inevitable, is there's always going to be people that want more information. They want, I always laugh with my engineering customers that call. It's like, within about 2 questions, you've got a pretty good idea of what their background is. It's like, oh, are you an engineer by chance? And it's like, yeah, 37 years as an electrical engineer at the nuclear power plant. I'm like, yep. Okay. I'm glad to connect you with someone that can get you the answers that you need. Cause I'm a huge believer in that too. And I think, you are too, obviously, of like, if I don't know something, I'm not going to commit to anything. I want to get somebody correct answers. So can people reach out to Mastervolt? Like if somebody really has in-depth, obviously we wanted them to go through their dealerships and work through those people and the channels, and they'll work through us. But sometimes there's just somebody that just has to know the real nitty gritty. Is Mastervolt willing to speak to customers? Are they helpful with that kind of thing?
Yeah, very much so. They have multiple contacts that you can reach out to, but obviously we would recommend they get to the dealer, and then the dealer will reach out to us, and then we'll connect them with Mastervolt if that's what we need to do. But yeah, they speak on a level that, most people, I mean, they'll keep up with the best of them on as far as electrical language goes.
Yeah. For sure. It's like, I know what a heart does, and I know there's veins and it pumps blood, but you don't want me explaining how to do heart surgery and why this valve opens this way and that one doesn't. That's why you go to your cardiologist. Like that's kind of how I try to relate it to some people. Like, I understand it, like I get it, and I can get you information, but if you really have those questions, like, we're going to get you to somebody that's the surgeon for this particular thing. So And in a lot of cases, like you're our chief resident solar surgeon or whatever we might want to call you, because you've done all this, you've done a lot of this research, and you've kind of gone down the path. And that's why I wanted to get you on here. And I tremendously appreciate you taking the time to do it. I think this is going to help a lot of people, help answer a lot of questions. And if it's good feedback, maybe we do this with other features and other things that we have of like, why do we do it this particular way? So I just thank you, man. Appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you, Zach.
All right, brother.